I'm Chip Townsend, and this is the Team Chip Podcast. Hobby of doing martial arts can become a business, a service to your students, but an asset to your community. How to be not just a good martial artist and not just a good business person, but also a good leader. Okay, guys, before we jump in, I want to revisit a conversation that hits home for a lot of martial arts school owners. Many of us started our martial arts schools because we loved it, but at some point, passion has to grow into structure. They've got to come together so we can succeed. This episode is about making the mindset shift from hobby to business so your school can grow and last and truly serve your community. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to the Team Chip Podcast. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Wanted to talk a little bit today. We're kind of thinking about martial arts school ownership, entrepreneurship, business leadership, from hobby to business, and maybe a little bit about shifting the mindset. But, myself included, like I find a lot of martial artists, they got into martial arts changed their life, made their life better, just whatever it was, took them from an unconfident kid or a kid that was picked on all their life to someone that was confident, or helped them to learn to focus better, become a better athlete. There's just so many different things, relieved stress so that they could operate and have better relationships. There's just so much that we can offer in the martial arts world. But I find so many times people are super, super passionate about that. And that hobby of doing martial arts can become a business. Or maybe somebody has a real job, right? And they want to share their martial arts, so they set up a little gym in their garage, and it's a hobby. So it's kind of a hobby to, maybe teach some of the neighbor kids and your own kids, and it can develop into other things. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And, if you're going to go for it and make it a business, why does this matter? Why does it matter to have structure and business systems and, be scalable and to help you to not struggle? Because I find sometimes some of the most passionate hobby kind of mindset martial artists struggle the hardest. I'll say it again. Very passionate, very good martial artists, but they kind of have this hobby mindset of it's just my side thing or my fun thing or my hobby. Struggle the most to make ends meet or to make it work, etc. So, let's talk a little bit about recognizing the hobby mindset. What's the difference? So the hobby mindset might be, I've already said it, but I have a real job. Martial arts is my side thing. It's my fun thing. It's just fun for me. Hobby mindset might also be kind of a lack of understanding of the basics of business. Your hobby is kind of growing a little bit, but you're, again, just focused on the mat side. So real quick, I'll plug in here a book that I think everybody that runs any business should read at some point was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It was a really powerful book. I haven't read it in years, but I remember it making a monster impact on me and understanding the dichotomy in a business of the technical skill and the actual business operation. So just a quick example, and I believe the example they used in the book was, you're working as a lathe operator, a wood lathe, a steel lathe, whatever that is. You're operating a lathe. You get really good at this skill. And all of a sudden, maybe your friends and maybe your parents, family, you're kind of going, hey man, maybe you should just buy your own lathe and open your own business, right? And you open that business up and even in the beginning, maybe it's you buy a little lathe and it's in your garage and it's a hobby, right? It's just something you kind of do on the side for fun. You enjoy what you do at work and you want to make some of your own little things. And so anyway, but you decide to open your own place and got to have a space. You rent a building. You don't put signs up. You don't go get an assumed name, set up an LLC. You don't do any of the business side. You get in there and you start kind of letting people know, hey, I opened up a shop, but you don't really market. Within a couple of years, you're gone. You're not making ends meet. You can't make the money. Anyway, so there's a lot to this. And that book, E-Myth, really helped me to go, okay, because that was me. I took over our martial arts school and I was just martial arts crazy. I'm going to teach, I'm going to change people's lives. Brawr, I'm going after it. And then as we're going, it's like, oh gosh, why are we not growing? Or why are we struggling to make ends meet? Why are we living on beans and rice sometimes just because, anyway, so I digress a little bit, but that hobby mindset, you don't have clear policies, your revenue's inconsistent, you kind of, or you're winging it. So those are some things to watch out for. If you begin to feel like that hobby is taking over enough that you want to turn it into a business, you're like, you know what? I really love teaching in my garage or this little space I did rent and I'm kind of making it work, but I need my job and my career to pay my bills. And how do you shift that mindset? So, and this is not an answer all be all, but just some thoughts around this. If you were going to quit your job to attack your hobby and make that your full-time thing, which is what a lot of people in the martial arts world end up doing over time, you need to make sure that your hobby is bringing in enough revenue to replace your revenue, your pay that you were getting, or enough of it, a high enough percentage of it to cover you so you can get by relatively comfortably, so you're not living stressed every day, trying to make ends work. But other reasons that you might want to switch to the business mindset is you're outgrowing your bandwidth. Maybe you started this hobby in your garage and a couple of the neighbor kids, people said, hey, can you teach my kids? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. So you got them in the garage, teaching them, you're charging them pennies, if anything. And then the next thing you know, there's more neighbor kids showing up and more people kind of seeing, man, this looks really cool. That looks really fun. I want to do that. And you're kind of outgrowing your bandwidth and it's growing and you can't do it all by yourself. So that could be an option. You're constantly struggling with cash. I mentioned that, your hobby's not bringing in enough to sustain it or to get you to transition over to making it your full-time thing. You're feeling exhausted, you're fried, you can't seem to grow beyond your own effort because you're working that full-time job and then pouring your heart into that hobby to try to maybe grow it. But again, you're still kind of in that hobby mindset. Another thing that can be a struggle is you may even feel like I don't know what to do to relieve some of this pressure, and I've got enough people going here that I can't serve them well. You may have some students in the group that are really passionate too that might be willing to jump in with you and help. Maybe not as an owner even, but just as a team member some way. So, it might be time to make some shifts from kind of, again, the hobbyist mindset to the business mindset. Now, I want to qualify this. Hobbies are not bad. Everybody needs an outlet, to something that they enjoy, that they do. I'm fine with that. So please don't hear me as saying a hobby is a bad idea. I'm just talking in terms of if, your martial arts is kind of your hobby, you begin to get a taste for it. Maybe you make a little money teaching the neighbor kids and you're like, I could make this a business. When do I make that switch? I'll say this again. You can't make the switch until you can replace your previous income. And there are different stages to this. If you're a young man that's batching it, you got minimal debt, you might be able to jump into that school really early, boom, and take off with it because you don't have a lot of need. But if you're a guy that's been, 10 years, I know of doctors that have quit doctoring to run martial arts schools, own martial arts schools, high level careers to change and move into the market because it's such a passion for them. You're going to have to build that school and that hobby business pretty big to replace your income because you may have a wife and kids and, car payment, a home, different things you have to pay for. So everyone's going to be in a different place, but hobby kind of mindset to business mindset, how do we make that shift? So one thing is stop seeing it as a hobby and start seeing your martial arts school and what you're doing as a service to your students, but an asset to your community. And I like to use kind of business terms when I talk about that. An asset is something that's giving to you. It's giving all the time. It's an asset. It's not a liability. It's not taken away from. It's giving. And so start to see your hobby as something important enough that it's an asset. It's giving back to the community. It's changing lives and it's helping people to grow. So one of the first steps in switching from kind of hobby to business is realizing your hobby is that important. It has the potential to change lives on a huge scale if you'll move into the business mindset enough not to take over your passion, but to understand the business well enough to run a strong business, to truly grow your reach into that community and touch lives. And so some of the changes that need to happen, like professionalizing operations, you're going to have to go get an assumed name, maybe set up an LLC, a limited liability company of some sort. You've got to set up some sort of business structure. You're going to have to build some structured policies. We can't just be shooting off the hip all the time in the hobby with 5 students, or, you can get away with that. But if you're going to go to 50 and then 100 and then 500, you're going to have some very structured policies implemented and put into place. Another thing too, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to my podcast episode with Mr. Ron Sell, the founder of Spark, Customer Relations Management. But automate as much of your business as early as possible that you can. Not the mat, not the teaching, but the business, that piece of the dichotomy, the billing, the follow-up, the marketing and stuff that you can build into some sort of customer relations management software. I think sometimes, and I've talked about this before, when we're early in our business, we don't think we're important enough or big enough to have a CRM. I don't think you can start the CRM quick enough. Get it started, get used to using it, get your systems in place and systemize and really begin to watch out. In professionalizing the operations, you're going to have to develop a team to handle day-to-day tasks. Now, in the early days, like whenever we first took over our martial arts school with 57 students in our little rented space, I did everything. Taught the classes, class planned. I had to learn the class plan because honestly, it was so small. I shot off the hip all the time, but I had to learn the class plan. I was the maintenance guy. I was the bathroom cleaner. I was the student counselor. I did everything in the school, but as you develop, you're going to need to develop a team, and you're going to have to understand kind of a team mindset and how to be not just a good martial artist and not just a good business person, but also a good leader, right? Because you own a business doesn't make you a leader. Because you are a martial artist, I don't believe that really makes you a leader yet. It pours into your attributes of being a good leader, but it doesn't make you the leader. So you're going to need to learn how to develop a team. It's going to be super important as you professionalize that you set goals. Growth goals are going to be so important. I can't tell you enough. A personal kind of example of this is a couple of years ago, we started a full-on, actually several years ago, 2019, I believe it was, we started a full-on, we're just going to start a traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. I'd been training Jiu-Jitsu for years. We had traditionally been Taekwondo, kind of kickboxing. And so we opened that program. Well, anyway, last year, we're kind of floating at a certain active number just in the Jiu-Jitsu piece. We were floating between 75, 79 active students in that program. And so I sat down with my instructors that help operate and run that program. And I said, guys, we need a goal. What can we do? This was at the beginning of 2025. What can we do? And one of them said, hey, let's break 100 active, by, the end of 2025, something like that. And I said, that's good. I said, but is that enough, to go from 75, 80 to 100, well, okay, 115. So we agreed 115 was, not crazy, hairy, audacious, but it was, big enough to stretch us, kind of push us, expand things as we're growing the program. Within a month, 2 months, we've gone from about 75, 79, that little range right there. We're over 90 active right now. And it was almost an immediate growth started happening. The reason I'm saying this is because I think it is absolutely monstrously important that you set goals. I don't want to get too granular, but you can have goals for active count, for drop rate, for revenue, even for your expenses. And how would you do that? Well, monitor your climate control system. Make sure it's turned off at night. Set goals in as many areas as you can that doesn't overwhelm you, that you can keep your eye on consistently and manage. So I don't want to beat that to death because I'm a big fan of goals and setting smart goals, achievable goals, etc., but goals that challenge you. So, set growth goals. Learn how to track key metrics. And what are the key metrics? In the early days, your total active is a good number to look at. It's inspiring when that number is going up. It's de-inspiring when that number is going down, but it's a good metric. Student retention. What is your drop rate? Revenue, expenses, your conversion rates, which is, out of this many contacts this month, I had this many trials and I got this many closed. Now, this podcast episode was not really intended to be an all-out how to operate a business, but just to give you some ideas on maybe how to shift from being kind of a hobbyist and eventually turning that into a business. You're going to have to start thinking like a business person. You're going to have to learn to operate a business, which means buying some books, studying, starting to connect with other business owners and operators that are willing to sit down with you and answer questions and maybe mentor you. Find mentors in our industry. Teamship Curriculum Solutions, look us up and give us a holler. We would love to come alongside you. If you're having trouble getting over 50, 75, 100 students, talk to us. We would love to be able to help you out with that, but that's not what this is about today. But just shifting from that mindset of being a hobbyist and, that's just my fun, that's just my passion, to turning that into a business. I know I've beat it up a little bit, but you're going to have to set up an LLC, some business structure, put some policies and systems in place to make it all work, and find mentorship somewhere. Another thing is, create sustainable revenue streams. Your monthly dues is really probably your core consistent revenue stream, the monthly dues that you charge from your students. And that's how you'll pay your fundamental and base bills. But there are ways to diversify that some by doing private lessons, every so often doing specialty clinics, teaching seminars, maybe even outside of your little hobby area there. Maybe a local business wants a self-defense clinic for the ladies in their office or for their staff. There are ways you can begin to diversify. And then don't forget too, when we start digging into the business, there's a retail side to this. And, your student uniforms, t-shirts, shorts, maybe you do, we do summer uniforms where students can wear shorts and t-shirts for certain periods during the summer, things like that. So there's a lot to it, but shift out of it being a hobby and just something fun. If this is what you choose to do, grab the bull by the horns, be super confident with it, because as martial artists, we should already be super confident anyway, and let's run with it. Kind of some takeaways, maybe treat your passion with the respect it deserves. And by running it as a scalable and structured business. And what I mean by that is your passion for martial arts, in my opinion, is an amazing passion to have, because I've watched martial arts change so many lives. Don't undervalue how important you can be in your community if you operate a business with good moral character and good value, and you treat people well and truly teach good functional martial arts. Action steps, what's an area in your hobby, if you're doing this as a hobby, that you can begin to professionalize this week? Can you go down and get your LLC set up or get an assumed name? Can you begin to structure your classes or structure your curriculum a little bit more tightly? So I just encourage you, if it's something you're passionate about, take the steps. The USA was built on the back of entrepreneurs and small business, always has been, and I hope that it always will be. Freedom. We live in such an amazing place that we have the ability to go out at our own will and go, you know what, I want to open a business. And as long as that business is legal and has a good moral and character attached to that, man, more power to you. Let's go make that happen. And I believe that martial arts is a phenomenal way to make that happen as well. I thank you for jumping on and listening to the podcast. Please give us reviews. Subscribe to the podcast. Let us know what you want to hear. If you're more visual, jump onto YouTube and follow the podcast there. Don't forget to check out Teamship Curriculum Solutions, Teamship Martial Arts. Connect up with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to come alongside you if possible and help you out, to coach you in your business or help you with your curriculum or other areas. You guys, I love being here and doing this. I truly hope this drops some nuggets for you. If there's just one thing you took from it, I'm thankful for that. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into the Teamship Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget, subscribe, share, and or leave a review, because we need you. We appreciate you so much, and without you, we can't make this happen. Remember, consistency is the key to success, so go out there and never be outworked.